It's strange how some of the most life-changing moments happen on the days you least expect anything special. There was nothing grand about that day. No seminar, no event, no plan to meet someone important. We were just going to pick up some products from our new business partner. That was it. A simple errand. But what started as a normal business trip turned into something I never imagined. An encounter that completely shifted how I see life, business, and leadership. When we arrived at their office, everything felt routine. Papers, products, greetings, the usual. Then our partner said something random. "Let's take a picture with the owner before you go." I thought it was just a polite gesture. What I didn't realize was that the owner was a billionaire. At that moment, I didn't know we were about to experience one of the most humbling lessons in leadership, not through a speech, but through his actions. There wasn't enough room in the elevator, so we offered to take the stairs. But the billionaire said, "No, you go ahead. We'll take the stairs." I paused for a second, almost confused. Here was a man who could have easily demanded priority, but he chose humility. That one simple moment told me more about true wealth than any business book could. When we got to his office, he welcomed us and asked about our purpose. From his tone, I could tell he didn't yet know we were already business partners with his company. Still, he treated us with respect. No ego. No arrogance. He didn't act like someone whose time was too expensive to spend on strangers. And that's when something unexpected happened. What was supposed to be a 5-minute greeting turned into an hour-long conversation, but it didn't feel like a conversation. It felt like mentorship. Not the formal kind, but the kind that feels natural, unplanned, and yet deeply profound. It was as if every word he said carried layers of meaning. The kind of wisdom that can only come from years of experience, trial, and success earned the hard way. I remember sitting there, not even wanting to blink, afraid I'd miss something important. He wasn't talking about fancy strategies or business trends. He was talking about principles, the kind of truths that cut through the noise and hit your soul. It wasn't motivational, it was directional. And in that one unexpected hour, my perspective shifted. I came there thinking we were just doing business, but what I walked away with was something far more valuable, an awakening. Sometimes, God arranges meetings not to open new deals, but to open your eyes. Not to expand your business, but to expand your awareness. And that's what that moment was for me. An awakening. Because sitting across from that man, I realized there's a big difference between doing business and understanding business, between chasing money and building value, between being busy and being aware. It's easy to think success is about strategies, numbers, or opportunities. But that day taught me something else. That success is often hidden in the invisible principles that most people overlook. I didn't plan for mentorship that day, but mentorship found me. And as I left that office, my mind was buzzing. Not with more questions, but with clarity. I realized I had just learned 3 principles that completely changed the way I look at success, people, and purpose. 3 principles that didn't just make me want to grow my business, they made me want to grow as a person. And that's what I want to share with you next. That 1-hour conversation felt like a blink. I didn't even notice the time passing until he suddenly said something that snapped my attention. "This," he said, looking at us directly, "is the first thing you must understand if you want to succeed. Awareness." He leaned back, calm but firm. "If I can teach a 14-year-old how to make money, how much more you, business owners yourselves?" And that was the first principle he taught us. At first, I didn't fully grasp it. It sounded simple, almost like a cliché. But as he went on, the meaning started to sink in deeper and deeper. He wasn't talking about intelligence. He wasn't talking about luck or connections. He was talking about awareness, the ability to see what others can't. He said, "You can't achieve what you're not aware of." And that line hit me hard, because it's true. You can't reach for something you don't know exists. You can't hold a vision you've never seen. Most people don't fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they lack awareness of what's possible. Then he gave an example that stuck with me. He talked about one of his business partners, someone who used to be skeptical about luxury and success. That man once said he didn't understand why anyone would buy expensive watches or drive Mercedes-Benz cars. In his mind, those were just symbols of excess, unnecessary, and prideful. But that partner changed, not because he suddenly became materialistic, but because he became aware. He realized those things weren't just about luxury. They represented a level of achievement, discipline, and excellence. They weren't about showing off. They were about what kind of mindset it takes to reach that level. It's not the watch that matters, he said. It's the person you must become to earn it. It's not the car. It's the capacity, the awareness, and the responsibility that comes with being able to afford it. That was when everything clicked for me. It wasn't about chasing material things. It was about expanding awareness. Because awareness gives you access. When you're unaware, you live small, you think small, and you expect small. But when your awareness expands, your life expands with it. That's what separates the successful from the stuck. Not resources. Awareness. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how true that was in my own life. There were so many times when opportunities were right in front of me, but I missed them. Not because they weren't available, but because I wasn't aware enough to recognize them. It's like that story in Genesis about Hagar. She was crying in the desert, ready to give up, thinking she and her son would die of thirst. But then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well that had been there the whole time. The well didn't suddenly appear. It was always there. The problem wasn't lack. It was unawareness. And that's the same with most people in business and life. The resources are there, the connections are near, the ideas are within reach, but if your awareness is blind, it's as if they don't exist. The billionaire told us, awareness is like a key. The moment you see, you unlock doors you didn't even know were there. And that's what mentorship does. It expands your awareness. Because success doesn't begin with action. It begins with seeing. You can't act on what you can't perceive. That's why awareness always comes before transformation. And here's something he said that I'll never forget. You think you need to work harder. You don't. You just need to see clearer. That hit me so hard because I realized that I've been running, pushing, grinding, but without awareness, all that effort was directionless. It's like rowing a boat in circles. You're exhausted, but you're not getting anywhere because you don't even know where you're heading. Awareness gives direction to effort. When he said that, I thought about that partner who didn't understand luxury. The moment his awareness expanded, everything else followed. He started to see possibilities he never saw before. And when he saw them, he began to move toward them. And eventually, he achieved them. Because awareness precedes achievement. That's why so many people are praying for things they already have access to. They're just not aware of it yet. And that's what this billionaire made me realize. Awareness is not a one-time discovery. It's a lifelong unfolding. Every level of success requires a new level of awareness. You can't operate a 6-figure business with a 3-figure mindset. You can't manage a team with the same awareness you had when you were working alone. That's why the more I listened, the quieter I became. Because it wasn't just about business anymore. It was about how awareness connects everything. Your faith, your purpose, your leadership. He said something that felt like wisdom straight out of Proverbs. The wealth of a man isn't in his money, it's in what he's aware of. And I understood, because you can lose money and make it again. But if you lose awareness, even opportunity will pass you by unnoticed. So that first principle, awareness, became my foundation. After that day, I started paying more attention. Not just to numbers or sales, but to people, to timing, to lessons that life was trying to teach me. I began seeing how God places things around us long before we even ask for them. It's never about luck, it's about sight. And maybe that's what separates those who build empires from those who stay employees of their fear. Not effort, not talent, awareness. Because when your awareness grows, your life begins to mirror it. That's why he told us, awareness is the seed. Everything else is the fruit. And that was the first principle that Billionaire ever shared with me. It didn't just open my eyes to success, it opened my eyes to myself. The more I listened to him speak, the more I realized that wisdom isn't always said, it's shown. He never mentioned the word humility. Not once. But everything about how he moved, how he spoke, how he treated people, that was humility in action. And that became the second principle I learned that day. It wasn't something he directly taught. It was something I absorbed just by watching him. Because here was a man who could easily command power, and yet he chose to serve first. He didn't try to impress anyone in the room. He didn't make us feel small. He didn't talk about numbers or brag about success. He made us feel seen. And that's when it hit me. This is what humility looks like. The world defines humility as being quiet or shy, but that's not what I saw in him. What I saw was confidence wrapped in gentleness, power under control. That's when I realized humility is not weakness. Humility is the ability to stay grounded while you grow higher. Because real strength doesn't need to shout. It simply shows. When I remembered how he insisted we take the elevator first and said he'd take the stairs, it suddenly made sense. That wasn't a random act of kindness. It was a reflection of who he was. That moment taught me more about leadership than any seminar ever did. True leaders don't climb higher so others can serve them. They climb so they can serve more people. And that's exactly what Jesus taught. He said in Matthew 23:11, "The greatest among you shall be your servant." That's the pattern of true greatness. If you want to be great, you must first become a servant. Because in God's system, the way up is always down. The world says be the boss, but Jesus says be a servant. And that's what I saw in this billionaire's life. The reason people followed him wasn't because he was rich, it was because he was servant-hearted. You could tell he cared more about helping others grow than showing off what he had. And that's when I understood something powerful. Success is not about being the loudest in the room, but being the one who lifts others quietly. When you lead with humility, you don't need to demand respect. It naturally comes to you. I realized humility is what keeps greatness safe. It's like the roots of a tree. The deeper they go, the higher the tree can grow without falling. That's why some people rise fast but crash just as quickly, because their success outgrew their humility. But when humility grows first, success becomes sustainable. I remember him saying something that captured this truth without even using religious words. He said, if you want your people to work hard, you must work harder. If you want your company to care, you must care more. It was his way of saying, lead by example. That's the secret of humble leadership. You don't lead from a distance, you lead from within. He reminded me of something Jesus did before the cross. He washed his disciples' feet, the King of Kings, kneeling before ordinary men. And that act wasn't about dirt or cleanliness, it was about leadership through service. That billionaire was doing the same thing in modern form. Not literally washing feet, but showing the same spirit, serving through his actions. It made me think about how I had once defined success. Back then, I thought success was about reaching a level where people work for you. But now I see it's about reaching a level where people grow because of you. Because of you. That's humility. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less often. It's not about lowering your confidence. It's about lowering your ego, so your confidence has room to grow. And that's what I saw in him. His company was thriving not because he had the most brilliant systems or perfect strategies, but because he had a culture of humility. People respected him because he respected them. He said, if your people are tired, you should be more tired. If your team is struggling, you should be the one to lift them. That's when I realized humility is leadership. It's what makes people follow you. Not because they have to, but because they want to. When you lead from pride, people obey. When you lead from humility, people believe. And belief builds empires. That's what separates ordinary business owners from great leaders. The ordinary ones chase validation. The great ones chase growth for themselves and for others. That's why Jesus' model of leadership still stands today, because it's not built on hierarchy, it's built on service. He said, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And that's the essence of humility. It's the realization that leadership is not about how many people serve you. It's about how many people you serve through your purpose. That's what I learned that day. And it changed the way I look at my own business. Because I used to think being the boss meant you had to look important, make decisions, and stay in control. But now I see that true leadership is about lifting others, empowering them, and taking the stairs first, so others can ride the elevator ahead of you. That's humility in motion. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's powerful. It's the quiet force that keeps your heart aligned while your business grows. And if you don't have it, success can destroy you faster than failure ever will. That was the second principle I learned that day. Not because he told me directly, but because his life spoke louder than his words. And I'll tell you this, once you see humility in real form, it changes you. You start leading differently. You start treating people differently. Because you realize that the more God lifts you, the more you're meant to lift others. That's how greatness works in the kingdom. The greatest ones are always the servants. And that's what I carried home with me, the understanding that to build something lasting, you must first build yourself on humility. That was the second principle I learned from that billionaire. Not spoken, but lived. And what came next, the third principle, would completely shift how I think about relationships, business growth, and the power of true partnership. The third principle I learned that day was about partnership. Just like the first two lessons, he didn't label it outright. He never said, "This is how partnerships work." But the way he spoke, the way he told stories about his business, and the way he handled people, it all revealed something deeper about how real growth happens. It started when he talked about the challenges they faced during expansion. He mentioned that their company once hit a season where orders doubled overnight, but the supply chain couldn't keep up. Their partners couldn't meet the demand. He said it calmly, not as a complaint, but as a reminder. "The right partner will never let you down in times of growth," he said. That line kept replaying in my head long after we left his office. Because I realized growth doesn't only test your systems, it tests your relationships. Partnership isn't just about agreement, it's about alignment. You can have a partner who agrees with you, but isn't built for the same level of responsibility, and that will break you during momentum. It reminded me of our own business situation at that time. We were in the buy and sell line, and everything looked fine until our sales started growing faster than we expected. Suddenly, we ran into the same problem he described. Orders kept coming in, but our supply couldn't catch up. And when customers started going directly to our supplier instead of through us, that's when I realized we didn't have a partnership. We had a transaction. That billionaire made me see that difference clearly. He said, "If people can bypass you, you're not building a system, you're building a shortcut." And shortcuts never last. He explained that big companies protect partnerships through systems, not by control, but by structure. And that made me reflect on why many small businesses never scale. It's not because their idea isn't good, it's because their relationships aren't built to last. Real partnerships are based on trust, transparency, and mutual growth. And that's something I'll never forget. He shared how, early in his career, he partnered with someone purely because of profit. It worked for a while until pressure came in. When things got hard, the partnership collapsed because it wasn't rooted in shared purpose, only in shared gain. Then he said something that hit deep. When your reason for partnership is money, it will end the moment money gets hard. And he was right, because real partnership isn't just built in good seasons, it's proven in hard ones. That made me think of the verse from Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9 to 10. "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow." That's what partnership really is, lifting each other up, covering each other's blind spots, sharing not just the reward, but the weight. The billionaire explained it in business terms, but I heard it in spiritual language. He said, growth is never meant to be carried alone. And that's true. Even Jesus sent his disciples 2 by 2. Because partnership multiplies impact, but it also divides the pressure. It's the same in business. If you're surrounded by partners who panic when challenges come, your business will mirror that fear. But if you're surrounded by partners who see problems as opportunities, you'll start to grow faster than you ever could alone. That's when I realized something about my own leadership. I wasn't just building a business, I was building people. And if the people around me couldn't carry the same vision, the structure would eventually collapse, no matter how hard I worked. Partnership isn't just about contracts, it's about covenant. Contracts protect the business, but covenant protects the relationship. That's what separates companies that grow from those that dissolve. And what struck me most about that billionaire's story was how he made every partner feel like family. He didn't use people. He grew with them. He said, "If you make people win with you, they'll never leave you." That's the heart of partnership, helping others win while you win. And that principle changed the way I saw everything. Because before that day, I used to think I needed better opportunities, but I realized I just needed better partnerships. I needed to surround myself with people who shared my values, who believed in long-term growth, not just quick gain. That's when I understood that partnerships are not found. They're built. They're built through communication, through small acts of consistency, and through honoring each other even when things get difficult. Because if pride destroys teams, humility sustains them. And that connected everything I had learned so far. The awareness to see opportunity, the humility to serve others, and the partnership to grow together. It's a cycle of abundance. When you become aware, you start seeing who you need. When you stay humble, you attract those people. And when you build with them, you multiply results. That's the rhythm of divine business growth. Before we left, he said something that felt like a closing statement, but really it was a challenge. He said, "Don't just find people who can help your business. Find people your business can help." That line hit differently, because it flipped the idea of partnership upside down. It's not about who can bring me value, it's about who I can bring value to. Because when you build partnerships that way, you create legacy, not dependency. That's how billionaires think, and that's how leaders build. And when I walked out of that office that day, I realized something deeper. We came there to get products. But God brought us there to get perspective. He didn't just let us meet a businessman. He let us meet a mirror of what we could become if we learned to see, to stay humble, and to build the right way. That 1-hour mentorship didn't just change how I view business, it changed how I view people. Because now I know you can't grow alone, you can't scale alone, you can't sustain alone. You need awareness to see opportunities, you need humility to handle blessings, and you need partnership to multiply impact. That's the blueprint that Billionaire unknowingly gave me. And maybe that's what God does sometimes. He disguises lessons as accidents, mentors as strangers, and breakthroughs as ordinary meetings. Because when you're aligned, even an elevator ride or a short conversation can become a divine appointment. We thought we came for business, but we left with wisdom. And that day, I didn't just meet a billionaire. I met a reflection of what's possible when awareness meets humility, and humility builds partnership. That's the day I realized some mentorships you plan for, but the best ones, God plans himself.